us for another instalment of this video mini-series which Property Tribes is producing in collaboration with leasehold expert Bernie Wales. And Bernie and I have been shining a spotlight on leasehold FAQs that crop up on Property Tribes all the time. And Bernie, for this instalment, we're going to talk about activities that may be prohibited by the lease, because when landlords are thinking of buying a leasehold property, they do need to be clear on the activity that they're going to be undertaking and make sure that the lease will allow that. Now, we've already discussed underletting or subletting just to a standard AST tenancy. Most leases will allow that, but it might cost an annual renewal fee or a tenancy renewal fee. But Bernie, you know, we're hearing more and more about serviced accommodation, holiday lets, and I regularly see, you know, newbie landlords saying, oh, I'm going to buy a flat in city centre and do serviced accommodation. Well, actually, they need to be careful, don't they?
They sure do, because they're not buying the flat. They are renting that flat for an awfully long time. And if you are renting, there is an agreement. In this case, it's a long lease. And that has rules about what you can do and what you cannot do. Equally, what the landlord can do and not do. But in terms of buy-to-let landlords, we often get Airbnb and very short-term lettings, serviced accommodation. Both of those may be tricky, and running a business. And that's not just working ladies or drug cannabis farms or whatever, definitely not those sorts of things. But you need to read the lease to see what the use of the flat is. What are you allowed to use that flat for? And it's normally residential purposes, and it's quite often residential purposes for a family or single family or something of that ilk. And so you are quite restricted often. Yes, you can do ASTs and what I would call a normal subletting, but if you're thinking about doing serviced accommodation, which is going to involve your staff coming in, dealing with that, servicing, etc., and going out, you know, that's a lot of churn in terms of people, footfall coming in and out of the block. It causes security worries for the property managers, etc. So it may well be frowned upon. Airbnb definitely will be a problem, I would suggest, in 99% of cases, because you have got very short-term people coming along who don't know the block at all. It has security implications with keys going to unknown people. It has health and safety, fire implications, because those people probably don't know where the fire exits are, etc. And quite often you get wild parties and God knows what happening in those short situations. And that is a real risk which you should not take as a buy-to-let landlord, I would suggest. So you need to check the wording in the lease and read it carefully. Most of those Airbnb serviced accommodation type situations are running a business. That's why you're doing it. You're running a business from the flat. The business activity takes place in the flat, and therefore you'll be breaching the terms of the lease because running a business is not allowed in a residential flat. A short hold tenancy with a longer thing is not classed in the same way as running the bit. Although the tenants are there, it's not running a business from the flat. It's not a business activity in that sort of sense. And there is case law on that now in the county courts and higher up. So be very careful about that. And if in doubt, find out whether anybody else is doing it. You know, ask the local letting agents, ask the local estate agents, etc., and maybe get some leasehold advice on reading the lease, etc., and seeing whether your proposed activity is permissible or not permissible, or it's permissible if you get a written consent from the landlord.
Indeed, it again boils down to read your lease. And I think, you know, you mentioned, Bernie, people coming and going at all hours, causing disturbance to residents, that can impact massively on your position as a leaseholder within the block. I've heard of stories of when there's a concierge, if they find out the person is a short-term guest, they turn them away. What I'm trying to say, Bernie, is actually doing this activity, holiday lets or short-term accommodation or corporate lets, many flavors of these kind of short-term lets, doing them without reading the lease is actually a very high risk strategy. And in absolute extreme cases, and I have heard of around 7 occasions, the lease has actually been forfeited when the freeholder found out that the leaseholder was allowing this activity in the block. So don't underestimate the importance of checking out the lease and making sure that it's okay to do this.
Yeah, buy-to-let activities are an investment. They're a business, an investment, and you've got to control risk. If you don't read the lease and you're going in for one of these activities, serviced accommodation or Air BnB, etc., that's not investment, that's gambling. And you're gambling with hundreds of thousands of pounds. Why would you do that? That's a crazy business thing to do. It really is. So you should read the lease, check out what's what, reduce your risk, get permission if you need it, and do it the right way. It can then be very profitable in the right place, in the right way. But you do it in the wrong way, you're almost guaranteed to lose money.
And just a final warning, some landlords may receive letters from people offering them guaranteed rent to take over the flat for 5 years. And again, Bernie, they need to be wary of offers like this, because it's almost certain that that company or individual is going to sublet the flat, probably for serviced accommodation activities. And again, that could put the lease at risk.
It can, and there's been cases in Property Tribes and other websites as well very recently in those situations where rent was guaranteed for 5 years. They got the rent for the first 2 months and then nothing. And the one I read last week was, £24,000 of arrears by the time they managed to get the people out. So again, crazy from a business point of view. You just don't need that sort of hassle and the cost of legals and everything else. So, it really is an investment activity, and you've got to reduce risk, not take chances and not gamble. It's madness doing that.
Wise words, as always, from Bernie. And Bernie has a free ebook available to Property Tribes members, How to Read Your Lease, which you can download, as I said, free. However, if you need extra assistance with understanding your lease, then Bernie does offer an advisory and consultancy service, and he can help you understand that. So Bernie, thanks for joining me on this instalment, and I'll see you on the next one as we continue our leasehold FAQs from a landlord perspective.